Burgertime! Burgertime!
Hello, can you hear me now? I think you can. Anyways, everyone out there in Twitch TV land, I'm here to do what is my very irregular Twitch streams, but I'm here to go ahead and talk about something that kind of developed its own life and blew itself out of proportion. Let me just go do a little test here. Blew itself out. Yeah, it's. I just went to the website to verify that my sound is working. It is. Okay. What's going on right now in the press is there's this big brouhaha about the Fallout source code has been found. Hallelujah! I'm here to dispel what appears to be a plethora of fiction, myths, and wishful thinking. And of course, you heard of the old adage where if I tell somebody something, and then that person tells somebody that same thing and pass the news down, by the time it comes around to the beginning, it resembles nothing of what the original story was. That's what happened here. There's been a bunch of articles recently about that the source code had been lost of Fallout 1 and 2. Well, truth be told, it was never lost. And I'm not the sole person who has it. There's at least 5 people that have it. And I know this because I spoke to Tim Kaine about this. What had gone on was about 2 years ago, Tim Kaine did a podcast. He does these little videos on YouTube. You should subscribe to his channel, by the way. Where he does a musing of the industry for between 3 minutes to 20 minutes per video. And it's just him talking about his thoughts of what has happened in the industry. One of the things he brought up was the fact that Interplay, the company that I was one of the founders of, not the founder, one of the founders, you know, Brian Fargo, Jay Patel, Chorwell, they have just as much credit as I do. But as when Interplay lost an employee, either through they quit, usually by self-termination, i.e. they quit and went to someplace else, Interplay's management, who I had no part of, got testy about that. And they threatened litigation. They wanted to know where they went to because, unbeknownst to a lot of people at the time, the management had made backdoor deals with other companies in the Irvine area where they can't poach each other's employees in an attempt to keep salaries down. When Tim left to go help form Troika, he was told under no uncertain terms that if he retained anything from Interplay, they would sue him. If he tried to hire anybody from Interplay, they would sue him. And backdoor, they actually contacted video game companies saying, if you do business with Troika, we won't do business with you. These are all little things that they did behind the back. So they're just numerous, because I've had dozens of people tell me their stories. I've written them all down and have stacks of the evidence here. So, but bottom line was that when anybody left Interplay, and myself included, by the way, we were threatened with lawsuits and stuff if we went to a competitor or if we retained information. Now, from a legal standpoint, if you work for a company under what is known as a work-for-hire agreement, that is, most companies make you do this, in which, as a condition of employment, before you even can sit at your desk, you must sign what is known as a work-for-hire, meaning that anything you do while you're working at the company, taking money from the company and using the company's equipment, belongs to the company. This is a standard practice, which means that if you were a person who had signed such a deal, then the company actually has a leg to stand on. That if you were to leave the firm retaining company assets and stuff, and it managed to leak onto the internet somehow, and it could be traced to you, they could hit you with a violation of your non-disclosure agreement, stating that when you signed saying you're supposed to keep company secrets in the company, and then you leaked it out after you've left, then they're going to first ask, why did you have that when that stuff technically belongs to the company? Because everything you did belongs to the company. Now enter me. We founded Interplay when Boone Corporation imploded, and we were sitting around a table going like, what are we going to do now? So let's form our own company. So when we formed the company, we never signed anything because there was no paperwork. We kind of just suddenly started doing it. Now, I do remember years later, I was asked to sign a work for hire, which I promptly tore up and threw in the trash, saying, I'm never signing one of those things, ever. And they stopped asking. So I was never under a work for hire agreement with Interplay, ever. So that's why when they tried the, you got to get rid of the source code thing, it's just like, show me the work for hire agreement. Plus the fact that I own stock in the company, so I own stock in the company, so I can easily prove I'm one of the owners. So I have as much right of the stuff as well. So it's one of those things where, and besides, one thing companies don't seem to understand is software like that has a shelf life. An example, I have a copy of the source code to Fallout. Why? Because after leaving Interplay, I started doing business with MacPlay and the people who bought MacPlay from Interplay. And one of the games they signed was Fallout 1 and 2 for the Mac. Well, that would mean Interplay had to give us the source code because Fallout was written after I'd left Interplay. But since we were going to publish Fallout for MacPlay, I got the source code, archived it, did a Mac port, released the game, archived the Mac source as well, and then moved on to the project because, when you're doing Mac ports, you're doing one a month. And I was just, I was doing one every few weeks pretty much, just churning them out. And of course, archiving the source code because back in 1992, 93, around 92, was when I got into that kick of I got to archive everything because Interplay was definitely not doing that. So that's why I have the source to Fallout 1 and 2. And of course, me being the owner of MacPlay, I am working behind the scenes to be able to re-release it for the Mac, modern Macs that is, the original games. It's not like I don't already have a Mac port to start from, so yay me. But back to the original subject here. When Tim was talking about the fact that when he left Interplay and they made him throw away all the source code and throw away all of his notes and things like that for his work on Fallout, Interplay, of course, demanded that of him, and he mentioned that on his live stream, or his podcast, shall we say. Well, some reporter watched it to that point and then said, oh my god, the source code to Fallout is gone, and wrote an article about it. Not waiting until the video got to the end where Tim Kaine says, yeah, but then years later, friends of mine came by and says, hey, I was going through my hard drive and found this. Do you want a copy of it? And after years have gone by, he knows at least 5 other people besides myself who have worked with him and have worked on Fallout, and they too all have a copy of the source code to Fallout. So the Fallout source was never single-handedly saved by me. That is not true. I did save it, but I wasn't actually the only person who saved it. So I just want to set the record straight and make that clear. And then, of course, once this article ran like a week ago saying that the source code had been lost to eternity, I call up Tim Kaine going like, what's going on? Because this person's quoting you. And he's going like, I didn't talk to them. So then we contacted a reporter who then confessed they only watched half the video, didn't watch the rest, published that article, and then that's when we then talked to him. And then this is not physically on the phone, this is through emails. We then corrected the thing, and then of course the reporter took things a little bit out of context, making it sound like I'm the only one who saved the source code, not understanding that because he should have just watched the video to its end where Tim mentions there are more people who have it. And this video was made 2 years ago. This isn't new news. This is old news. And so, of course, for me, I'm getting all these calls of people saying like, hey, so happy you saved the source code. Thank you for saving Fallout. And I'm like, you do know that, like Fallout, there are more than one vault, okay? Vault 13 is not the only vault in existence. Vault 101 is not the only vault in existence. And that's what's happening here, is that sometimes people get fixated on one thing and then just blow out of proportion. Now, granted, I am happy for all the press because it is getting attention to MacPlay, and it is something that I'm very glad to announce that we are currently bringing Wizardom from Apogee to the Mac. We're currently pawing through the source right now, getting the code up and running. We hope to be able to announce a release date, but it's going to be very soon because it's already running on a Mac. So thankfully, the port was really, really quick. But if you've ever played Wizardom, which just came out from Apogee, be on the lookout for that on the Mac App Store for the Mac. And of course, that's the first of several games that I'm currently negotiating for and in the middle of converting to the Mac for release on MacPlay. Fallout? We'll see. I mean, after all, I do have a contract with, I think that was Interplay for the release of Fallout for MacPlay. So I'm going to have to work on that to get it updated because, as you know, Fallout is now technically owned by Microsoft, which is technically owned by Bethesda. I mean, the other way around. It's owned by Bethesda, which owns Microsoft. Or Microsoft owns Bethesda. Bethesda owns Fallout. And this whole chain of who owns who is melting my brain. But I am working with that, so... But don't look for a remaster. We will probably release them in their existing versions on the Mac at first. Never say never. I mean, I've already talked to Tim Kaine, and if we were to somehow convince Bethesda to let us do a remaster, well, he will be on board to help us out. But, of course, these are things that are pie in the sky, speculation. It's not to be taken as gospel. Trust me on this. Granted, the fact that I just said that means I'm probably going to see a bunch of press saying, like, Tim Kaine's going to do a Fallout remaster. It's like, no, it's not that. No. Not until we actually could, like, get Bethesda interested in this and blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. And that's the whole point of this whole talk right now, is just how the press in the video game field is so starved for news that they make up stuff, because I've actually seen articles in which I read the article, we're like, where the hell did this come from? And then when I see that, what they did is they copied an article, which they copied an article, which they copied an article, like the telephone game, and by the time it got to this article, I'm like, I'm now the sole holder of the Fallout IP. It's like, that's not even close to the truth. Fallout is owned by Microsoft. Done. That's the statement. So when I read an article that said that, I'm like, I've got to do a video on this. This is getting out of control, because it's like the telephone game has really gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And yeah, someone writes here on the Twitch stream, glad for Vault Becky. Yeah, but it's back to, I make it is my hobby that I collect source code, and I archive it, and I put it in long-term storage. Like, this is just one of about 200 packages of these I've got that are already organized. Inside is like, this one I can show. This is a Blu-ray M-Disc that holds 90 gigabytes. An M-Disc is one that'll last 1,000 years. And as long as there is a working Blu-ray player that can read 4-layer discs, this disc is readable. Not like tapes in which, someone asked if Stone keeps source code. The answer is yes, I have that. But then, like this one, is I got the archives of Ritual Entertainment. I got their servers, I got their backup drives and tapes. It took me a couple of weeks to go through it all, but then after I organized it, got rid of all the duplicates, and folders of things that are best left in the trash can. I then made sets of discs like this, and I make multiple copies. Because, like, again, this house, I live in Texas, meaning that I can be susceptible to, tornadoes and stuff. So if my house ends up in Oz, at least there's archives in both safety deposit boxes as well as a storage locker. Far, far away, by the way. So that, even if a tornado hits this area, it would have to be something straight out of Twisters in order for it to get everything. And of course, I also have a cloud backup, which of course is an encrypted folder, so that in case anybody does somehow manage to get my password and get past my two-factor and get to the accounts, they'll pull down the zip files that are all encrypted. So good luck, because I don't trust cloud. Now, granted, if someone stole those disks, those are not encrypted, because those are ones where I intend my heirs, or what's it called, archive.org, to one day have these disks and then go through them all and figure out what's... Now, we're going to go back to another issue, which is also a problem of source code retrieval and preservation, is copyright. I've had several people already ask me, why can't you put the source code up on GitHub? Well, for the same reason why no one else has put it up on GitHub. It is property of Microsoft. It is property of Bethesda. When I uploaded the Doom 3DO source code, it's because I got permission from id Software to do it. Because there were 3 people involved in Doom 3DO. Me, because I'm the one who wrote it, i.e. Logicware. Number 2, Art Data Interactive, which is ceased to exist, so it's not even an issue. And id Software. So really, the only person who would grant permission that could stop me is id. But because I was going to grant the permission. I contacted id, and they said, it's not like we haven't released the source code to the game already, so sure, have ats. And of course, then I asked, is it okay if I do an MIT license? And they said, we don't care. So I put an MIT license on it. So therefore, anybody can use the source on anything they want. Granted, like I said, with shelf life, the game's from 1995 on a 3DO. You're better off writing a game from scratch than using that source code as the basis of a game you want to write. Unless you're doing a 3DO game, but then again, there are better engines on the 3DO than a Doom engine. Because, I mean, not unless you want to spend the time it takes to actually properly optimize the code, and if you are, cheers. Hopefully you'll have more than 10 weeks to do that version of your game. But back to Fallout. So if I do get permission from Bethesda to release a source code, I will do so. Just like the literally 1,000 video games I have source code to. If it's the copyright holder says yes, or if the copyright holder completely dies and doesn't exist anymore, and that I feel that there's no chance in heck that I can get sued, then I'll release it anyways. But goes back to you do what you got to do. I know some of the games I've done, like Astro Rock and so forth, I'm going to be releasing the source code to those once I re-release the games on Steam. And of course, some people ask, well, why do you wait so long? Well, I had 12 years of marital bliss with the woman of my dreams, and then I had to spend a little over a year mourning her passing. But now I'm back on the horse and working with MacPlay, getting new Mac games out. I mean, I've got a Mac here, which is for the old classics. Over here, I've got an M1 Mac. This Mac is a Mac OS 10.6 to 10.13. This one is 10.14 to modern. And then this one's a Linux box for Steam Deck emulation. So, that's how I go ahead and do all my compatibility testing on my Mac versions of the game. But one person writes here, my naive self thought that the version of Fallout on Steam would have been a modern recompile of the code just because it supports modern resolutions. I think it's actually DOSBox or something, but I thought they did make a Windows version of that game. Tim Kane says that Interplay and Obsidian lost the source to his game, so game preservation would be impossible. Well, Interplay did lose the source to a lot of games when Interplay went out of business and then reimagined itself as a little tiny licensing company. But in reality, it's on hard drives that have been sitting in a warehouse for like 30 years, so maybe the drives died. But back to what I was saying. When Tim first mentioned that he didn't have the source to Fallout, and this is like 10 years ago, he's had, over the last 10 years, 5 other people contact him saying they have the source. So, therefore, it's the game preservation is only happening because people who still had it on hard drives never deleted it and are now coming forward. And which again goes back to my plea, is that those of you who have source codes to games that, like anything from Telltale, anything from any AAA game, any not so AAA game, if you have a copy of the source code and you would very much like to put it in a vault where they would be put into Vault 13 for preservation for future generations, send it over to me. And of course, if you could send me the permission to prepare it and upload it onto GitHub, or at least let me know who it is I could contact sometime in the future discreetly, because I will never ever give away my sources, shall we say, like a good reporter. A person writes, never mind, how do you describe the Steam... Well, anyways, back to source. So if you can, just either email me at becky@burgerbecky.com, or just let me know and I can go and grab the code. I mean, I've already had several people just recently give me source drops that I'll be going through this weekend to clean them up, verify that anything that's inappropriate is removed, because unfortunately there have been drops where I would find folders of stuff that should not be on that hard drive, period, and I'll leave it there, and then they hit immediately in the trash can. A person asks, do I have Star Trek 25th Anniversary? Yes, I do. I have that one. I have Star Trek 25th Anniversary, Judgment Rights, Starfleet Academy, what was it? Starfleet Command, I think it was called. There was a bunch of Star Trek games. I don't have Wrath of Vulcan Fury. Don't ask. If I had any of that, I would have shared as much as I could on that one, especially the videos of Leonard Nimoy or DeForest Kelley and so forth, of their performances. I don't have any of that. I wish I did, but unfortunately that game was written it was worked on after I had left Interplay. Had I been at Interplay at the time that game was in development, you damn well be sure that I would have cut a snapshot of that source. Steam Deck emulator is just basically, it's a Linux box, just making sure the game runs on Linux. I actually first runs on Linux, that everything runs fine, so forth. Then I get the code, put it up on a Steam Deck, 99% of the time just runs just fine, and I don't have to change a line of code. Once in a while I find something on a Steam Deck where either there's a performance problem or something, and then at that point I actually debug it on the Steam Deck, find out what's wrong with it, and then I'm done. I have the Steam Deck version. I don't use Proton. I actually write the game in Linux. And that's pretty much all I really have to say right now, other than please follow at MacPlay, MacPlay Digital on X. Follow at MacPlay on Blue Sky, prefer Blue Sky, and we also have a page on Facebook, but mostly Blue Sky, and of course MacPlay.com. The website is going to be updated very, very soon, so what you see there right now is a temporary website. The new website is being created, but as you know, things take time. I'm only one person. I'm not made out of money, so I can't hire a bunch of people. Unless you happen to know somebody out there who wants to invest money into MacPlay, then send them my way. But when I'm working on a shoestring budget, things take time. But Evil Bite says thanks for the stream, and one person says Proton is great, but Linux native builds are nice to see when they pop up. Well, I'm a firm believer in doing native code. So it will be, anything we do for Steam Deck will be a Steam Deck native app. Anyways, I'm going to let you guys go, and I'm going to hopefully try to do these more often, especially since now I'm going to start doing live streams of the Mac versions of several of our games. But again, it's back to so many hours in a day, and I got to get shit done. So I'll talk to you later, everybody.